Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to DBGM's online forum with DBGM, Princess Janae Place, and New Alternatives are presenting Nowhere to Lay My Head, being homeless and LGBTQ plus and a person of color. This evening, we have invited three members of our community who have experience, knowledge about what it means to be homeless as an LGBT person of color in our communities. We have Jevon Martin from Princess Janae Place. We've got Kate Barnhart from the New Alternatives. And hopefully towards the end, we will have Jasmine Perez from Project Renewal, who will join us to present the mental health aspect of what it means to be homeless and how does homelessness impact and affect LGBT people of color. I should not have to say this, but I am going to say it anyway, that those of you who know me know that I'm extremely pissed off about the current environment that we live in. I remember once hearing the founder of the California Center, Carl Siciliano, say that one of the things that distresses him is to know that somebody is discarded because of who they are. They are discarded by their families because of who they are. And I take it, I am grateful for the fact that I have four walls, a bed, a roof, and hot water with me where I live. But I know that there are a number of people who do not have that. It breaks my heart when I see young people, and I don't know their gender, their sexual orientation, or their gender identity, sleeping on the subway. Those chairs on the subway are the most uncomfortable things to lie down on. And I also breaks my heart to consider some of the abuses and the violence that members of these of our communities experience on a daily basis, on a nightly basis. And it really worries me, and I'm troubled. I am upset to consider how do these things impact their mental health? What kind of life? How do they see life after these experiences? So what I'd like to do is outline for you guys this brief program, which is our welcome. We'll have a moment of silent reflection, and then I will introduce our presenters. Javon is going to talk about being LGBTQ, a person of color, and homeless. Kate is going to talk about being young, LGBTQ, a person of color, and homeless. And hopefully Jasmine is going to be able to join us, and she will talk about my mental health, dealing with LGBT people of color and homelessness. And then if there's time for questions and answers, we will have that. We'll make some acknowledgements, and then we will, it'll be the end. Hopefully we can get all this done by 7 o'clock. So for the first,
Antoine, you muted yourself.
hello, so can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. So I'd like us to take a moment in silence to just consider those of us from our communities who have died. Their names, some of those whose names are there around the candle. Somebody's typing. Can you please mute your phone, your mic? We're taking a moment in silence as we think about those who have died. We're thinking of taking a moment in silence as we consider, and we don't know how many people of color who are homeless and LGBTQ who may have died from COVID, that they may be forever unknown. No one to mourn them. Thank you very much. So to keep us going, we have some community agreements that we'd like you all to keep in mind. Please keep your microphones muted. We ask you not to take photos of the screen because there may be people on here who are whose cameras are on, who may not want to be known that they are present in a forum like this. Please be respectful of everyone, even if you disagree. We will use the chat box at the top right hand of the screen for questions. Please leave your questions in the chat box and indicate if for a specific speaker or if a general question for everyone, and I will read it out. And we will share the slides with everyone at the end of the forum, so that if you want, we can have the slides available for you. Our first presenter is Jevon Martin, who is the founder and executive director of Princess Janae Place. For more than 25 years, Jevon Martin served as the mentor, educator, advocate, and a house father in the ballroom community. He started his transition in 2000 at Callan Lord in New York City. One of his priorities comes from his experience with homelessness as a member of the LGBTQI plus population. Jevon founded Princess Janae Place in 2015 and serves as its executive director. The organization provides medical, legal, mental health, and recreational services and referrals to LGBTQI plus services with an emphasis on the trans homeless population. He is a brother of the first trans men fraternity, Theta Beta Chi, which he helped build the brotherhood among Black trans men in New York and nationwide. Jevon advocated for marriage equality and gender legislation in New York and is a member of the Equality New York Advisory Council. He's a motivational speaker and received many awards and citations, including Mr. Trans USA New York in 2020, the City News Impact Award in 2020, a Certificate of Excellence from Governor Cuomo in 2019, the Pioneer Chris Award in 2018, the Circle of Life Person of Trans Experience Award in 2017, the Octavia St. Laurent Trans Activist Award in 2016, Transman of the Year Award in 2015, and the Marsha P. Johnson Award in 2014. Community members, I'd like you to welcome in our midst, Jevon. Welcome, Jevon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't think you were going to read all of that, Antoine. I have to shorten that, but thank you so much for inviting me to this very important forum about homelessness in the community, because that is a problem, especially during COVID-19. We are still housing LGBTQ people at this time. You know, some people are shut in at home. They're not working, they're working from home. Other people opted for unemployment, but we still are housing the homeless community during this time. I appreciate being a part of this. And so I'm going to jump right into it about Princess Janae Place, right? We help people of trans experience maximize their full potential as they transition from homelessness to independent living, right? And we've been doing this right now in quarantine for COVID-19. We've been placing people in hotels and Airbnbs with the help of Glitz organization, and it's been Hiring, and it's also an eye opener to know that people would actually put out family members during a crisis right now. This is a pandemic, and people are actually putting their children out of their homes. They're actually putting out their spouses and people that have been living with them prior to COVID-19. And this saddens me that this is where we are in this day and time, that we just get rid of people, let not alone family members that we're tossing in the street because we don't agree with who they are. So we applied for emergency funding. We received emergency funding, and we have been placing people in hotels, Airbnbs, and we somehow are connecting with realtors and landlords and even regular people that have rooms in their homes that we can place people in. Um, so there's this new, I have no idea where they got it from, but HUD came up with this new ruling that they can be biased against trans people in the shelter system, right? And this article was just out. You can read the article in the news, and I'm taken back by how they can use your birth records, who you were born as, to distinguish which shelter you're supposed to go to. So, in other words, they're saying someone as myself, standing here as a black man, although I was born female at birth, I'm supposed to go to a women's shelter. Now, I don't know how many women would be in approval of me being in a shelter with them. And so their excuse or their answer, reasoning why they want to have transgender people placed in the shelter that they're born as, is because they are fearful of cis men going into the shelters with women claiming that they are trans women. Now, I don't know how many trans people you all know or come across or in connection with, but I'm a black trans man, and I do not go into spaces that are not for me. And what that looks like for me is when I transitioned to a black man, I didn't know that people would fear me. Right? So I'm pretty sure that cis males are not going to just say that they're trans women just to go into women's shelters to rape them. But this is the reasoning that they're giving. And I'm appalled by this rule regulation that they're trying to uphold. It's the same thing with the bathroom issue that we had. That they were worried that transgenders, this is what they said, transgenders will rape children and women in the bathroom. I don't know how many people send their children to the bathroom. Parents send their children to the bathroom by themselves. If you're at a rest stop, at the movie theater, in any public place, why would you send your child to the bathroom by themselves? And then have an issue with transgender people raping them. Transgender person has nothing to do with sexuality. And this is something that I've been talking about for many years, that we have the LGBTQIA and all the other letters When you talk about L, it's lesbian. G is gay. B is bi. And T is trans, right? L is a woman that is with another woman, has sex with women. That is how that definition goes. G for gay men, someone who has sexual relations with the same sex, another man. Bi, you have sexual relations with men and women, right? Let's go with the T. Who do trans people have sex with? Whoever we feel like we want to have sex with. Has nothing to do with being trans. So you have to separate identity from sexuality, right? We identify as trans people. That's who we are. It's not who we sleep with. It's a difference. So people are getting this all blown out of proportion. Oh, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. You're afraid of what? You go to the bathroom to go to the bathroom. One or two, or change your clothes, fix your face, brush your teeth. That's what you go to the bathroom to do. Trans people do not go to the bathroom to fondle people. I haven't met one. So we're we're trying to live our lives as safe as possible without being murdered. Okay, that's the next thing. So I want to bring it back to the homelessness. And right now, transgender people are the most marginalized people that we have wherever you go. I'm not going to say the United States, globally, transgender people are the most marginalized people that you will meet. We are abused, we are ridiculed, we are shut down, we are treated less than. And when it comes to having a homeless trans person, it's even worse because we get discriminated against when we go to the realtors and the landlords to look at an apartment, right? Because they don't want these type of people in their establishment, right? It's a stigma for being trans. Just like there's a stigma for HIV, just like there's a stigma for Section 8 people, right? And we have to switch that narrative. We have to change the look of, oh, I don't want them around me. Some trans people, you have no idea that they are trans, and you wouldn't know if they did not disclose. I've had that problem many a times. Oh, I wouldn't know that you were trans. Okay, so now that you know, what is there a problem? So I openly tell who I am, where I came from, because through education and learning about who I am, it might assist someone else that is not so sure or scared to tell their story and something happened to them. I work with numerous kids who they're scared to transition because their mother, father, brother, sister will put them out or abuse them because they want to transition or they have started transitioning but they can't wear the clothes that they want to wear or the makeup or cut their hair because their family members will put them out. And this has to stop. We do not throw our children away. We do not throw our family away. We do not throw our friends away. And we have to do better. And what I mean by we, I mean by all of us, right? If you're breathing, you have to do better, right? And I don't want you to be super ally, super trans person, super person. If you see someone being discriminated against, say something. Just like here in New York, if you see something, say something, right? With the MTA, with the police, we need you to say something. Interfere in the negative so that the trans community can thrive. We are resilient. We are a educated group of people. We need to enforce the learning. We need to mandate. We need to mandate. That's what I wanted to say. We need to mandate that the police, the healthcare system, and the job system take training on how to talk to and how to receive trans people, particularly the homeless community. Because when they show up, the first thing they do is want to arrest for loitering. That's not helping. So you're going to put them in jail, which is another problem. And they end up dead like Leilene Polanco extravaganza because they didn't do their job at Rikers. You're supposed to check on people with 15-minute intervals when you have them in solitary confinement. That didn't happen. We just have to do better, right? And Princess Janae Place, Marsha's house. I'm not going to touch on the part for Kate. She could talk about new alternatives, but there's so many different organizations to help the LGBT community, but we need help, right? We need more apartments. We need more buildings. We need to take the funding from, I'm gonna say it, the police, right? Retrain them, mandate a retraining, and put it into our schooling. We're taking funding from the schools, and our children are not getting educated properly. They don't have enough books, right? We need to change this. Let's shift it and take care of our kids, because the kids are the future, the children of the future. We all know this. We have to instill and put all of this money into the kids. Why are we in the billions of dollars for the police when the police are the ones that are killing the children, right? The kids can't even go to the store. I saw it the other day. There were 5 kids in Atlanta walking to the store, and the police officer pulled their gun out, ready to shoot the kids. Like, where are y'all coming from? They're kids. So now these kids are traumatized by the police. This is not what we're about. Police are supposed to protect and serve and first do no harm. We all need to do better. And when it comes to homelessness, we need more space. Whatever that looks like, all these vacant lots in your borough, in your town, wherever you are on this Google meeting, look around. If there's empty space, give the information to your council person. Hey, there's an empty lot here. There's a vacant building here. We need to take the people out of the SROs. We need to take the people out of the homeless shelters and put them into apartments. We really need to get this together. We can take care of our own community. We've been doing it for so long, and we can continue to do it. And I'm going to close out with this. I don't know if my time is up, but I'm going to close out with this right here. 2 trans women, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, opened up Star House, and they took people in, and they gave them a place to lay their head. These people went to school, they got jobs, and they were productive people in the community. If 2 trans women, prostitutes, can do this, what's wrong with the rest of the system? That's my time, and thank you.
Thank you very much again, Jevon. That is actually very, very important, and I really do appreciate how you set the stage for this evening's conversation, because you covered a number of different areas, including federal, state, and local city regulations and rules, including the police, including talking about housing. So thank you very much for that. And thank you also for reminding us about Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. As we are in Pride Month this month, and Pride has become corporatized, has been taken over. And so we somehow seem to have forgotten that it was Marsha and Sylvia and a number of other trans women of color, as well as some gay and lesbians of color.
Yes,
Who
Stormy D.
together,
LaVerie. Let's not forget about Stormy D. LaVerie. A lot of people forget about them, and we have to know where we came from so that we know where we are going. And Pride was a riot. Okay, it was
yeah,
not a parade. It was a riot because people got fed up.
and we still should be protesting because there are more rights and equalities that our community deserves, especially people of color communities. So our next presenter is somebody that I have known for well on 10 years, more than 10 years now. Community members, I'd like you to welcome Kate Barnhart. Kate is a longtime AIDS activist and member of ACT UP NY, who has been arrested multiple times for acts of civil disobedience, protesting issues related to AIDS, healthcare, police brutality, immigration, and as part of the anti-Trump resistance. She worked with at-risk youth since 1994, including 6 years working with young felons at CASES, an alternative to incarceration program. Since 2001, she has worked with homeless LGBT youth. Kate spent 5 years as director of Sylvia's Place, an emergency shelter for LGBT homeless youth, and she is currently the executive director of New Alternatives for LGBT homeless youth, an organization she helped found in October 2008. In her free time, she rescues and rehabilitates stray cats. Community members, I'd like you all to welcome Kate. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. So, as Antoine mentioned, I'm Kate Barnhart. I'm the executive director of New Alternatives. What we do is we operate a multi-service harm reduction based drop-in center behind the Port Authority in Midtown Manhattan. And we provide, when we say multi-service, that means everything from meals to clothing to HIV testing to case management and counseling services. So we have a wide range there. Our young people are predominantly people of color, really overwhelmingly so. And there's a reason for that, which is that these are the young people that are at the sort of bottom of the heap in terms of our society. They're LGBT, they're people of color, and they usually are discriminated against on multiple levels. Many of them have disabilities such as mental illness, physical disabilities, and other types of learning disabilities or behavioral health issues. So these young people are struggling on multiple fronts. And what we see is a real lack of resources on the part of every level of government to try to reach and help these young people. In fact, this was really clearly sort of illustrated by the COVID epidemic, because as the crisis approached, many of us who work with this population were looking to both the state and the local government for guidance about how to keep the young people safe and how to keep our programs operating so that we could keep meeting their basic needs. And what we got was just nothing, crickets. It quickly turned out there was no contingency plan for the homeless population in this epidemic. There were no supplies or resources made available to programs serving these young people. A number of programs closed because they didn't know what else to do because there was no guidance. And there was also no way to obtain the necessary supplies like PPE and cleaning supplies, etc., to continue to operate safely. And so what we've been faced with ever since COVID happened, we never have had enough beds for this population. And it's better than when I was a young person and there was only Covenant House. And so queer youth usually opted to sleep on the pier. Well, of course, since gentrification, you can't sleep on the pier anymore. And now you can't even sleep the full night on the subway, thanks to the late night closures. But we still don't have enough shelter beds for LGBT homeless youth, and we certainly don't have enough long-term housing for this population. And now, post-COVID, a number of programs have remained either closed down or operating at minimal capacity, which means that, for instance, in the 21 to 24-year-old young adult category, we literally have no beds at all for this particular population. The only option is really to send them into the city shelter system, which is known for being unsafe for LGBT folks and also unsafe for young people and also not equipped to meet their specific needs. So it's a really difficult time. And our young people are also struggling psychologically because if there is anything that sort of keeps LGBT homeless youth going, it's the community. It's having each other and their adult allies that keeps them going. And now they're being told to stay isolated. The places where they gather are not available. You know, like for instance, normally we serve a hot Sunday dinner for about 50 young people. But we can't do that right now. We're handing out dinners to go, but they can't sit and hang out and chat the way they're used to. And that's been very difficult. And so we're seeing a real increase in mental health issues among our young people. We've chosen to provide our mental health services by telephone and on the internet, and as well as our case management services and our groups are online. And also, we've gone from one meal a week to daily meals that we both hand out from our space, but we also deliver to young people who are in housing programs all around the city that don't provide food, like the SROs. So we've been keeping busy, but a lot of programs are at reduced capacity. So, and there is really no guidance coming from the state or the city about how to reopen safely. So, you know, programs that are concerned about liability, about staff safety, about all these issues are really getting no guidance. So it really illustrates the fact that this population has never been a priority. And I think what we're seeing is that New York City, of course, is at its all-time high in terms of homelessness, and it's reflected in the numbers of young people who are homeless. We have sort of a population of young people who are coming to New York City from the red states, places where they feel where the homophobia, which is being encouraged by this administration, and the transphobia has gotten so intense that the young people feel that they have to come to New York to be safe. And what they don't realize is that it's not too safe here in many ways. And then we also have a local homeless youth population who are young people, queer youth who are either aging out of foster care or signing themselves out early because also we have lost our only LGBT group home in the ACS system here in New York because the state funding that's available is actually less than the cost of operating those facilities. And so the agency that was running it couldn't keep up with it. So we have, you know, a lot of LGBTQ youth are not feeling safe in the foster care system either. And so we're getting a lot of former foster youth homeless on the streets. And then we're also seeing youth become homeless for socioeconomic reasons. For instance, as the rates of eviction are rising, when a family gets evicted, in some cases, the whole family gets scattered and the youth becomes homeless. Or in other cases, you have the criminalization of youth causing homelessness, where young people who are convicted of felonies are not able to then go live with any family members who may be in the NYCHA projects because of the rules against felons living in the projects. And in fact, the family member could lose their housing for harboring a felon if they take the young person in. So, you know, there's a number of reasons why we have a huge number of homeless LGBTQ youth. But what's happening, and this has been happening increasingly over the course of my career, which is frustrating to say the least. But we have, you know, you think of it like a pipe, and I'm not sure I can get both my hands in this tiny box on the screen. But anyway, the young people are flowing into the pipe, right, from all these different sources I mentioned. And there's this bubble in the middle that keeps expanding, expanding, expanding. Those are the homeless youth, whether they're in shelter or not in shelter. And then the outlet on the other end of youth flowing out into actual housing is very, very, very tiny. And so what that means is you've got this huge bottleneck of youth who are ready for housing but can't get it. And so that is what we're up against right now. And I feel very strongly that, we're at a point in our society where, we were able to push the age of homeless and runaway youth, the city's definition, up to age 24, because we know that for young people who are not homeless, the age at which you become independent is much later than it used to be. Even 24 might be pushing it because of the job market and the housing market. Many, many young adults are winding up home with the family or unable to set out on their own and be independent well into what used to be considered adulthood. So you have this, being called by the researchers, transition age young people who are sort of, at the age in which I was in graduate school, but, they're not able to take these steps towards independence because of the conditions in our society. Yet our government agencies are not ready to include them in the definition of people who still need youth housing. Although they are folks who, if they had a family, would probably still be home with the family at 23, 24. But because they don't have that, I even have young people who've finished college and gotten their bachelor's and come back into homelessness because they couldn't go back home the way many of their classmates were. So without any funding to house people in that transition age, all the funding is for people under 21 years old. We pushed for years and years and years. We were able to get the age increased by the city to 24, but the city never allocated any funding for the 21 to 24-year-olds. So there's still a tiny number of beds for that population, all of them privately funded. So you're talking about, I could probably count them all on my fingers and toes, that few. And it's a real problem because that age group is really in need of services to help them transition to stable adult lives. So to conclude, and I saw Dr. Perry just posed a question, which is how many homeless LGBTQ youth are there in the city? And that's a really tough question because nobody has ever allocated the resources to do the quality type of research that would be required to determine that. We know that of homeless youth, we get somewhere around 40% identifying as LGBTQ. That number has been rising a bit over the years. Not clear if it's become less stigmatized to identify that way, and that's why we're seeing it rise, or if maybe it's just more popular to identify that. We don't have the research to answer that, but we are definitely seeing at least 40% often of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ. We know that, but what we have never had is an accurate count, and we may not because honestly, the folks who care are not going to dedicate the money. Counting any homeless people is very difficult because they're transient. And with youth in particular, they try very hard not to be noticeable. My gay dentist always said to me, I know all those kids on the pier, most of them are homeless, but they wear such fancy sneakers. And I said to him, well, you know what? They got those fancy sneakers off our donations table because it's only really people with money who can donate their sneakers that are not worn out yet. So we tend to get the fancy things, but the clients go to great lengths to not look homeless because they don't want the stigma and they don't want the vulnerability, but that makes them much harder to count. So we don't have a good number for that, Dr. Perry. So in conclusion, I would really urge you all to put pressure on your local and state government to allocate more funding for not just emergency shelter, although we need that, but also transitional housing programs and long-term housing for homeless LGBT youth and young adults. And this is going to be something we really have to fight because the coming budget from the state is going to be extremely ugly.
Thank you very much again, Kate. You paint a truly realistic and extremely frightening picture. And I just really wonder how many of our young LGBT who are homeless, what's going on in their minds? How are they thinking? How are they feeling? And one of the things that I heard you say just now, which you mentioned, is that because they are no longer, because of COVID-19, they are unable to congregate together, that the isolation and the social distancing is also adding and compounding their already pre-existing mental health. And I wonder if you can tell us briefly, how does this manifest? What does it look like? And I think Jasmine is waiting to come in to talk a little bit more about mental health from an homeless perspective. But I just want you to tell me just briefly, what does it look like? How are our LGBT people of color who are homeless, how does it look when they're having mental health issues?
And it manifests differently for different people, but I think we're definitely seeing a real spike in suicidality among the young people. I feel like I'm talking to at least one suicidal young person every day, it's a lot, and sometimes it's more than one a day. And of our young people who are prone to psychotic disorders, we've been seeing increased rates of decompensation and winding up in the hospital.
Thank you very much again, Kate. We are going to publish.
Hello. Hi, this is Jasmine.
Hey, Jasmine, hang on a second, Jasmine. Kate, we are going to publish at the end of this forum some slides with resources that people can access, including websites and so forth, for people to access. And all those who have attended tonight's forum, we will send you a recording of this call as well as the PowerPoint slides, which will have the resources. So thank you very much, Kate. Our next presenter is Jasmine Perez. She's a licensed master's in social work, and she's a program director at Marsha's House, one of the many in Project Renewal shelter system, and New York City's only shelter for LGBTQ plus 18 to 30-year-old single adults. As an out trans woman with personal life experience of being homeless, a homeless runaway teen, they are aware of the biopsychosocial factors contributing to the LGBT community becoming and remaining homeless. So community members, I'd like you to welcome Jasmine Perez. Hold on. Jasmine, can you hear us? Jasmine?
You have to unmute her.
I did.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, good.
Okay,
yes,
I think I had to unmute myself also. There's a code. Oh, hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Sorry.
Thank you very much for joining us.
No problem. Sorry that I had some difficulty getting on the call. Apparently, there was a firewall preventing me from getting on it. So I'm still in the street, and I'm making my way towards some a quieter place. So please forgive me in regards to any background noise that you may be hearing. Okay. I wanted to just piggyback off of that question in regards to what are LGBTQ homeless folks feeling and thinking nowadays. And interestingly enough, as a homeless runaway teen myself, back in the mid to late 90s, I recognized and I realized that a lot of my peers were very angry, were very depressed, and were very anxious. And I see that as well today. And I feel that with the coronavirus pandemic, it has just exacerbated these mental health concerns, and as well as with the increase in substance use, particularly with crystal meth use. I do agree with the last speaker in regards to a lot of the LGBTQ youth and their psyche in regards to their mental health being exacerbated by their substance use and crystal meth. Um, so to go a little deeper in regards to mental health concerns that present in the LGBTQ community, when it comes to depression and anxiety, you have a lot of LGBTQ folks that have been raised in home environments where they were confronted with a lot of abuse. And so whether it was physical or verbal abuse, that can cause a lot of anxiety issues as an adult. Now, where you have LGBTQ folks growing up in homes where you have parents, cousins, siblings, aunts, uncles, just freely and openly using derogatory remarks, for example, the F word, to just so freely. And so, just as much as we always say that you learn hate in the home in regards to racial disparities going on in the country, you also learn that in regards to one's sexual orientation and gender identity. So now you have a child that grew up around family that knows in their mind that their family is not accepting of LGBTQ folks. But yet now when it comes to the coming out process, they don't know if they feel fully supported. And so they're battling with now coming out with their family. And if they do, then they're confronted with they're confronted with families that have disowned them because of their identities now. And so because they disown them and because they haven't been taught the proper life skills to take care of themselves, doing laundry, cooking for themselves, bathing, now that they're of age and an adult and now that they're homeless, they don't know how to take care of themselves. And so now this whole cycle of abuse and mental health has caused them to feel angry and get angrier at how society has viewed and treated them all this time. And then to make matters worse, if you don't have what's called passing privilege, then you're not going to be able to obtain employment. So here you have someone who's LGBTQ identified, and because someone who's cisgender heterosexual is interviewing them for a possible position and can tell and may have some sort of gripe about an LGBTQ person, they're not getting hired. And so LGBTQ folks, as you just heard, are disproportionately homeless. They are disproportionately unemployed. And when it comes to the services to help address these concerns, there aren't that many competent providers out there to be able to provide it. So, I'm sorry, I'm in a very loud space right now, so I kind of want to mute myself. But that's what I have so far.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much, Jasmine. So let me ask you guys a couple of questions then. And this is either Kate, Javon, or Jasmine can answer these questions. We see that in a recent news article that the director of Covenant House says that they're always open and welcoming. Is this the case for LGBTQ people of color?
Unmute yourself, Kate.
Unmute yourself, Kate.
Is that better?
There you go.
Yeah, we're a block from Covenant House, and we work with similar age range. And I can say that Covenant House has improved slightly, but it's still not the first choice for this population. I was in a meeting when I was the director of Sylvia's Place with some high-ranking administrators from Covenant House, and I said to them, can you please stop sending straight kids down the street to Sylvia's place when you kick them out because we can't accept them and we don't have the beds. And they said, okay, we'll tell our staff not to send any normal kids to you. And that was just indicative of kind of an overall vibe there that's problematic. And it's particularly problematic for the transgender young people.
Thank you. Jevon, you want to jump in on this?
Yes, I do. So it is not a safe space for trans people. And we all do know that someone was murdered outside over there. And it's disheartening to me for shelters not to accept everyone, right? And I know that this is in a perfect world, it would be that way. But if you're offering shelter and this is the space that the city is paying for you to house homeless people, how dare you discriminate against the type of people that is coming for services, right? So it's not. It has not been in my books. I know several people that have gone there and have been discriminated against, and I'm just speaking for the trans community. And no, it is not a safe space for a trans community, although their doors are always open.
And they are also the biggest homeless youth shelter in New York by far, with 210 beds. They're huge.
Not only that, Kate, but they have 31 Covenant House in several different states. They have 31 buildings.
So here's another question. Here's another question for you guys. What is it that LGBT people of color who are homeless are most afraid of? What are some of the things that they're most afraid of?
The police.
The police. Yeah. There you go, Kate. We just tag team the police. Main one is the police.
They're most afraid of the police. Okay.
Yeah. And it's even worse now because this whole thing of throwing people off the subway in the middle of the night, now they're even more likely to run into the police as they're trying to, make it through the night outside.
So tell me, I think that is okay. So tell me briefly and quickly, how were many people, LGBT people of color who are homeless, managing during the COVID-19 pandemic? How are they staying safe, and how are they being cared for?
They're really not. We've seen tremendous, the New York City shelters. We know that 85 residents of those shelters have died of COVID because it took DHS so long to get their isolation facilities up and running. And it's only really recently that they've started de-densifying or making the shelters less crowded by moving people to hotel rooms.
And what can be done to assist LGBT people of color who are homeless and still in the midst of this pandemic? Because it's not over.
Well, let me jump in there. So for the last question as well, Princess Janae Place has been housing the LGBT community in Airbnbs, in motels, hotels. We have been putting people into permanent housing. We have funding for that since COVID-19. And we did get a grant from Gilead to move people into permanent housing, and we've been still doing that during COVID-19. We also got some funding from Dwayne Wade and his family, and we used that to buy masks and face shields, hand sanitizer. So we're distributing what we have, but we're also housing people, right? Because our work is not done. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. It was made a legal holiday, but we are still working because there are people every single day. Homeless people do not take a holiday off. Homeless people don't get Christmas and New Year's off. They're still homeless. So we're still working to house them.
Exactly.
Dr. Perry is asking, and I think it may more likely be a hypothetical question, that you know, what can be done to penalize parents who throw children out, who discard children like garbage? They're their own children.
Right.
It might be a theoretical academic question because that is so involved, but just hazard a guess.
No, so we are, and we have spoke about this to councilmen and council people. Sorry, just the other day when I was on one of these live events with Rebecca Seawright, I spoke about that in the chat and explained to them that there should be a penalty for throwing away children, for making children homeless, right? Because of their choice of who they are and who they want to love, right? And we have to sit at the table with more politicians and until we can make this, you know, a law. We should not be allowed to get rid of our children because we do not agree with who they are.
But then do you leave the children with the, I mean, do you want the family who's abusing them to keep them? It's complicated.
That's another thing that I mentioned earlier, right? Education, right? We need to educate people, and we have the resources. There are several therapists that are here doing Zoom therapy, right? The parents need to talk to the therapist. They need to reach out. There's the Trevor Project. There's so many organizations, PFLAG, that are available to talk to parents, to give them the resources that they can receive in order to know how to talk to their children and how to receive their children for who they are. You don't disown a child for who they love or who they are. And it's up here, right? They're still your children. You gave birth, you brought them into this world, and you're going to get rid of them because they're not who you want them to be. That just goes like with that show when they want the kids to be the dancers, the dance moms, and oh, you're not dancing to your potential. You're not doing, and they're yelling at the kids. These are kids. They're making the kids live through who they wanted to be. You know, oh, I didn't make it, so I'm gonna make sure my child makes it. How do you know your child wants to be a dancer? But if you get rid of your child because they don't want to be a dancer or in a beauty pageant or something, you talk to the children and you nurture them. And regardless of whether they're not who you want them to be, you still accept them for who they are, and you give them all the resources so that they can be great at whoever or whatever they want to be.
I see there's a little bit of commentary in the chat that suggests that in keeping or supporting with Dr. Perry's question and your responses by suggesting that if children are cast out from their families, then one of the penalties perhaps should be to make the parents continue for their financial and support. But we're at 2 minutes after time. So I'd like to thank Kate and Jevon and Jasmine for being able to join us. Thank you guys very much. This is an hour. I know it might have been good to do this for a little longer, but we said an hour. We want to stick to an hour. And I just really want to say thank you very much to Kate and Jevon and Jasmine for taking time, because I know you guys are like right on the front line and you got a lot going on. So for you to take an hour out of your time to come on here tonight, listen to me. I am very and truly appreciative of this, okay? Because some of what you're talking about, I think people need to hear. That is why I'm glad that we're able to record this video tonight. I'm gonna upload this to YouTube, and then I'll share the link with everybody, okay? because everybody needs to hear what you guys are talking about. And thank you once again. Nobody is really successfully or consistently talking about mental health in people of color, homeless communities. Okay. So next week, our next forum next Thursday is on incarcerated LGBT people of color. And so I may tap into Kate again on that because she's got some experience there. But I'll talk with her. Listen, she just kind of gave me a face, those you can't see. So she just gave me a face, but you know, I'll try to sweet talk a little bit so I can get her to talk with me some more about that. So next week we continue the series with looking at LGBT people of color in incarcerated and how does incarceration impact their mental health. Okay. So once again, thank you very much.
Will there be a link for the next week Steve, the incarceration?
Yes, there is a link already available.
Okay.
So it's going to come out when I send the slides presentation.
Yes.
There will be a link at the end of it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
There's a link for it already.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you, everyone.
Certainly. Actually, with the slide presentation, we'll have all of the remaining discussion topics with registration links to each of them already attached to it. So you can see that already and start registering in advance. Okay? So once again, hang on, I see everybody in the grandmother decided want to jump in and chat now. So, all right, thank you all very much and see you next week. Thanks, Jevon. Thanks, Kate. And thanks, Jasmine.
No problem.